Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. They say a man changes on the road. I didn't expect to, but 3 weeks away from home, surrounded by grease, metal, and the endless hum of diesel engines, give a guy time to think. The rebuild job outside Tulsa took longer than expected. Mornings that started before sunrise and nights that ended with the same cup of stale coffee from noon. I spent my days knee-deep in timing belts and crankshafts, my nights half listening to local news and half missing my wife. Lauren and I have been married 7 years. No kids, no real chaos, just quiet dinners, occasional date nights, and a life with little drama. I thought that was something to be proud of. Stability, comfort. But something about the way she hugged me goodbye 3 weeks ago, it felt routine, like it was just a habit. Like I was already halfway out the door, and she didn't really care if I ever came back. At the time, I shrugged it off. We all go through phases, right? The bus dropped me back in town just past 10 a.m. I opted not to tell Lauren the exact day I'd be back. Figured I'd surprise her, maybe even catch her making one of those awful pancakes she only cooked when she missed me. I walked the mile from the station to our house, boots kicking up dust on the side of the road. When I reached our driveway, I hesitated. Our lawn looked too perfect, freshly mowed, the edges trimmed like someone cared too much. Not that Lauren didn't like a tidy yard, but usually she waited until I got back. So the mower rattled too much. The porch was swept, the flower pots looked refreshed. I hadn't seen those hydrangeas before. I pushed open the front door and stepped inside, greeted by something even stranger, silence. The house didn't smell like home. It was something else. Not bad, not perfume, not cleaning products. Just unfamiliar. There was a faint trace of cinnamon, maybe? Something warm and artificial, like a candle burned too long. Lauren wasn't in the living room. No dog to bark, no TV playing softly in the background. My duffel hit the floor with a dull thud, and I walked deeper into the house. The air felt still, like it was waiting for something. The first thing I noticed was the bookshelf. It had been rearranged. Some books removed, new ones added, titles I didn't recognize. Self-help, mindfulness, something about healing the feminine spirit. That wasn't Lauren. She read true crime and diet fads. I passed through the kitchen, expecting to see the usual chaos. Dishes in the sink, crumbs on the counter. Instead, it was spotless. A new fruit bowl sat in the center of the table. Lemons, figs, and a perfect green apple. The fridge was full. Too full. Goat cheese, pomegranate juice, fancy mustard. And a mason jar of something golden at the back. Honey. Local, organic, raw honey. We'd never bought that before. I unscrewed the lid, dipped a finger, tasted it. Sweet. Too sweet. It didn't taste like us. I stood there, chewing, listening. Still no sign of Lauren. I checked my phone. One message from her, 3 days old. Hope you're staying safe. Let me know when you're heading back. Love you, I read twice. Then again, something about the heart emoji bothered me. She never used that one. I pocketed the phone and turned to head upstairs, but then I paused. On the dining table, there were 2 wine glasses. Clean, but just barely. The rim of one still held the faintest smear of lipstick. Lauren didn't drink red. Said it gave her headaches. There were no wine bottles in the trash. A creak upstairs snapped me out of it. Lauren? I called. Silence. I climbed the stairs slowly, like something was waiting on the other side. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it gently. Inside, everything looked normal. Bedmade. Her side of the dresser cluttered as always. I checked the closet. All her shoes were lined up neatly. But then I noticed my things had been pushed further to the side, like someone had needed extra room. Later that afternoon, she returned. She breezed in through the back door with a paper bag in hand and a sunny smile on her face like nothing was off. Jack, you're home early, she said, voice rising in fake surprise. Figured I'd surprise you, I replied, watching her carefully. She kissed me on the cheek. No hesitation, no guilt. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the pause, just before she smiled again. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she ignored it. That wasn't like her. Lauren never ignored texts. We sat in the living room a while, catching up. She talked too fast, laughed too loud. Every time I asked about her week, she'd deflect, Work was fine, yoga was the usual, and she'd barely gone anywhere. But I knew the kitchen didn't clean itself. I knew those wine glasses weren't for her alone. And I knew that kind of honey didn't magically appear in our fridge without a reason. Something had changed. And as I looked at her, listening to her talk about nothing at all, I realized something else. Lauren wasn't just keeping secrets. She was hiding. From what? I was going to find out. They say you can never go home again. I didn't believe that until I stepped off that dusty bus and looked at my own house like it was a stranger. 3 weeks on the road for an out-of-town engine rebuild job. Hotels, truck stops, and the same old radio stations was supposed to be just another gig. But now, standing in front of the place Lauren and I call home for 7 years, something felt off. It wasn't the siding, still chipped, or the wind chime that hadn't chimed in days. No, it was something deeper, a tension in the air, like the silence after a lightning strike. I unlocked the door, stepped in, and the first thing I noticed was the scent. Not bad, not perfume, just different. Cleaner, like someone was trying to cover something up. Lauren wasn't home. Her shoes, just one pair, neatly arranged by the door. Usually, her whole collection was scattered like breadcrumbs from kitchen to closet. I wandered through the living room, dropping my duffel by the couch. The coffee table had a new candle, lavender and eucalyptus, barely used. I'd never seen it before, and Lauren hated lavender, said it reminded her of funeral homes. I walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge. It was stacked. Strawberries, blueberries, artisanal cheese, and kombucha. Kombucha? Lauren drank Diet Coke like it was oxygen. And who eats blue cheese crumbles and figs unless they're trying to impress someone? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, listening. The kind of silence that presses in from all sides. The only sound was the ticking of the kitchen clock I'd meant to fix a year ago. I pulled out my phone. A dozen texts from work, a few from my buddy Sam, and one from Lauren 3 days ago. Hope you're working hard, babe. Don't forget to hydrate. Smiley face. Love you. Sweet. Smiley. Pointless. That was the thing about Lauren. She could be all roses and rainbows and still leave you freezing in the sun. I was still standing there when I heard the front door open. Jack. Her voice had that musical lilt to it. You're back early. Got done ahead of schedule, I said, turning as she walked in. She looked surprised. Not upset. Just not ready. She hugged me, tight but brief. Her eyes darted behind me, scanning the kitchen like she was checking for signs of damage. Missed you, she said, kissing my cheek. I kissed her back, but something was off. The way she held her phone, just a little tighter. The way her eyes lingered on the dining table before quickly moving to me. I looked there too. Nothing out of place. Except there were 2 mugs. Fresh. One still steaming. You expecting someone? I asked, nodding toward the table. She didn't miss a beat. Oh, no, I just made tea and forgot. I poured another one out of habit. She laughed. Guess I missed having you around. I smiled, but my eyes lingered on the mugs. Didn't know you were into herbal tea now, I said. You used to say it tasted like boiled weeds. She hesitated, then smiled again. Trying something new, health and all, right? She breezed past me and started unloading the dishwasher, humming something I didn't recognize. She never hummed, not unless she was nervous. I wandered into the den, glanced at the books on the shelf. One new one stood out, The Art of Polyamory. I pulled it out like it might bite me. Lauren's voice floated in. Oh, that? It's just something someone at yoga recommended. Just reading, not preaching. She laughed again, too high-pitched. Don't get any ideas. I tucked the book back. Later that night, we sat in bed watching a documentary. At least I watched. Lauren scrolled her phone with the brightness dimmed way down. Her screen kept flashing white, a text thread. She angled it away from me. She said suddenly, setting the phone down, I've been thinking. That phrase should be illegal. She turned toward me, folding her legs like we were in a therapy session. Don't you feel like we've been stuck? Stuck? Yeah. Like we've grown too comfortable, too predictable. I was wondering if maybe we should consider opening things up. I blinked. What? Not in a bad way, she said quickly. Just exploring, seeing what else is out there. I think it could strengthen us, make us appreciate each other more. I stared at her, like I didn't recognize her. She was calm, calculated, like she'd practiced this speech. You want an open marriage? I set my voice flat. Not necessarily. Just options. Fresh air. I didn't say anything. She smiled nervously. I mean, we're both still young. Don't you ever wonder what else is out there? No, she laughed. Well, maybe I just think about things too much. We went to bed not long after, her back to me, phone still in hand. I lay there, eyes open in the dark, replaying everything. The candle, the tea, the book, the produce I never saw her buy, the new smile, the old smile that no longer reached her eyes. Something had changed. Something had already happened. And whatever Lauren was trying to hide behind lavender candles and fresh berries, I wasn't going to sleep on it. The following morning, I woke early. Lauren was still asleep beside me, one arm draped across her side like she claimed the bed for herself. Her breathing was calm, steady, no guilt in it. No niece. That disturbed me more than anything. I got up quietly, stepped over the creaky floorboard near the dresser, and headed downstairs. The kitchen still looked staged, like a model home instead of the one we lived in for 7 years. I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, thinking. It gnawed at me. The glasses, the honey, the wine that vanished. The little signs that whispered louder than any confession. She was lying, but she was good at it. I just didn't know what she was lying about yet. While finishing my second cup, I opened the bottom drawer where Lauren usually kept her gift bags, wrapping paper, and spare greeting cards. She was one of those people who stocked up for birthdays 3 months in advance. At first, I just intended to check for a receipt. Maybe she had bought something new and left the evidence behind. But it wasn't a receipt that caught my attention. It was a small navy blue box wrapped in gold ribbon, tucked behind a stack of old magazines like it had been hastily hidden. I pulled it out, heart suddenly thumping with the kind of excitement you don't ask for. The box was heavy, carefully wrapped, no dust on it. Recent. It had a note taped underneath. I peeled it off. No envelope. Just a square of cream paper. The words handwritten in Lauren's tight, graceful cursive. Can't wait to see you wear this. You'll look incredible. Soon. My fingers clenched around the card as I opened the box. Inside was a sleek leather bracelet. Men's style. High quality. Not something you'd find at a department store. I turned it over. The underside was engraved. For your fire. Not a name. Just those 3 words. I stared at the thing, heart pounding in my ears, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was for me. Maybe this was some strange delayed birthday present. But Lauren never used emojis in handwritten notes. And fire? That wasn't a word she ever used to describe me. She used words like steady, strong, reliable, never fire. I set the box down on the table and walked circles around the kitchen for 5 solid minutes, fists clenched. My first thought was to confront her, wake her up, and throw the note at her face. But no, that wouldn't do. She'd lie. She was ready to lie. And I wasn't ready to hear her make up something sweet and simple about how it was just a surprise for me or just a friend's birthday. Instead, I decided to ruin it. I took the bracelet out and brought it into the garage. Found a pair of my oldest, gnarled pliers, and twisted the clasp until it snapped. Then I scuffed the leather with a coarse file, tore the ribbon in half, and reboxed the gift. Except now, it looked used. Worn, like it had been rejected by someone else. Then I resealed it, replaced the note underneath like I'd never seen it, and slid it back into the drawer. My hands were still shaking. I returned to the kitchen and scrubbed them under the sink. The water was too hot. I didn't care. When Lauren came downstairs, she looked fresh, energized. She kissed me on the forehead like I was some sweet dog. I forced a smile. "Morning," she said, opening the fridge. "You didn't finish the honey. You feeling okay?" I shrugged. "It's a bit much for me." She nodded, keeping her eyes down. "Maybe I'll use it for tea later." "Yeah," I said. "Maybe." I watched her as she moved. Her rhythm had changed. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't nervous. She was calculated. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, I noticed her hand brushed over her phone on the counter, flipping its screen down. Too smooth. Too practiced. We sat at the table. She scrolled absent-mindedly while I ate toast I didn't want. Later that afternoon, she left to meet Marissa at the new pottery shop in town. Marissa was her book club friend, harmless, divorced, constantly gossiping. The perfect alibi. I waited 5 minutes after Lauren left before walking back into the kitchen and opening the drawer again. The box was still there, untouched, and then I smiled. She hadn't given it to anyone yet. She was waiting, and now so was I. I didn't say a word when she got home. She mentioned Marissa's obsession with pottery wheels. I nodded, played the part. I even offered to make dinner. That night, she was unusually warm, playful. She draped her legs across mine on the couch and asked about the job in Tulsa. I fed her the boring version. She laughed at the right parts, but I could tell something was missing in her. Her eyes didn't light up when I told her I'd missed her. I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathe, wondering who exactly she'd bought that bracelet for and what fire meant to her now. The days that followed felt like walking across thin ice with a blindfold on. Lauren went about life with this newfound vibrance. Morning jogs, fresh smoothies, candlelit reading hours. And I played along. I smiled, I nodded, I pretended like I wasn't peeling her life apart in my mind piece by piece. But I knew something was wrong. People don't just decide to become new versions of themselves unless they're trying to impress someone else. On Thursday, I decided I needed to see it for myself. I texted my boss that the Tulsa job had run long and I'd be off another week. Then I dropped Lauren off at yoga like she asked. She leaned over before getting out of the car and kissed me, her lips soft and casual like everything was normal. "See you in an hour," she said. I smiled back, but my jaw clenched the second she turned. I didn't leave. I parked down the street, engine off, watching the little studio across the lot. She walked in with her mat under one arm, long strides and confidence in her hips. Too confident. She didn't even glance back. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. She didn't come out. I stepped out of the car and took the long way around the block. The front windows of the studio were frosted glass, but the door was propped open for airflow. I crept past slowly, glanced inside. She was there, stretching beside a blonde in neon green leggings, Marissa. That checked out. I waited outside for the full hour, pacing like a man with too much to lose. When Lauren came out, she was flushed, smiling, talking to Marissa like everything in the world made sense. For a brief second, I doubted myself. That night at dinner, I brought up something that had been simmering in the back of my mind. "You still talk to Ben?" I asked, referring to one of her old coworkers. The guy had been at her office before she moved to a new department last year. I caught his name more than once in conversations that made me uncomfortable. She looked up from her salad and shrugged. "Ben? Nah. He moved to Seattle, remember?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, just popped in my head. You always said he made you laugh." She smirked. "He did, but he also clipped his toenails at his desk. That kind of ruins the magic." We both laughed, but something in me was still on fire. The next day, I stopped by her old office building during my lunch break. Walked in like I belonged there, nodding at the front desk, heading for the elevators. I didn't plan to talk to anyone. Just watch. That's when I saw him. Tall, gray hoodie, sunglasses indoors, carrying a paper bag. It wasn't Ben, but Lauren stepped out of the elevator at the same time, laughing at something on her phone. She turned the corner, and he followed, quick. Too quick. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Later that evening, as she showered upstairs, I went through her purse. I felt sick doing it, but I needed something, a receipt, a card, anything. But what I found was worse, a phone I didn't recognize. Slim, black case. No look. I opened the messages. They weren't labeled by names, just initials. T was the most recent thread. I scrolled. "Today was perfect. I still taste you. You sure he doesn't suspect? You're addictive, you know that." I backed away like it was burning my fingers. Then I heard the shower stop. I shoved the phone back into the side pocket and backed out of the room. I couldn't breathe. Later that night, I asked, "You still have that old backup phone? The one from before your upgrade?" She blinked. "No, I think I donated it." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just thinking of using an old phone for the garage, that's all." She smiled, that same easy, practice smile, and went back to folding laundry. The next morning, I sat on the porch steps long after she left for a coffee run. My mind racing. I thought about confronting her. I thought about yelling, screaming, demanding the truth. But I didn't, because I wasn't sure who T was. And that mattered, because if I was going to blow everything up, I had to be right. I had to know. So I did something stupid. I drove to the coffee shop she frequented, Blackbird Roasters. I parked across the street. 5 minutes passed. Then I saw her, Lauren, talking to someone. A man. He was tan, short hair, fit, younger, maybe early 30s. He wore a black apron, barista, most likely. He leaned in close when he spoke to her. She laughed, touched his forearm briefly. My stomach flipped. I sat frozen, staring as they spoke for nearly 15 minutes. He handed her 2 drinks. One went on the counter. The other she took. Then she turned and walked out, heading for her car. Alone. I waited until the guy turned away and walked into the shop myself. Ordered coffee. Asked about the guy. The girl behind the counter raised an eyebrow. You mean Trey? He's always flirting with customers. Kind of a thing around here. I nodded, sipped the coffee, walked out. By the time I got home, Lauren was already there, humming in the kitchen, holding that same coffee cup. I watched her from the hallway. Everything about her was casual, relaxed. So I decided to test something. Hey, I said. I ran into Ben today. Her hands paused. Ben, she echoed. Yeah, near the gas station. She turned. He's in Seattle, Jack. I told you. I shrugged. Maybe he was visiting. He said he missed our cookouts. There was a flicker in her eyes. A tiny one. Huh, that's weird. He didn't reach out to me. She walked past me with her drink. Calm, unbothered. And I hated how good she was at lying. But something else bothered me more. Ben hadn't liet. Trey hadn't liet. And I was looking the wrong place. Saturday morning came slow, the sun filtering through the blinds like it didn't want to touch this house. Lauren was already gone when I woke, her side of the bed cold, the sheets tucked like she'd never been there. No note, no text, just an absence that somehow felt louder than her voice. I got up, brewed coffee, and sat by the kitchen window, staring out at the street like the truth might walk up and introduce itself. My head kept spinning around Trey, the barista. Younger, too confident, and far too familiar with my wife. But I had nothing solid. Smiles, coffee, a hand on an arm. It could be innocent, right? It could be nothing. Except it didn't feel like nothing. And nothing didn't usually come with a backup phone and secret initials. Lauren came home just after 9. She breezed in with a paper bag from the farmer's market and a face that looked freshly painted with charm. Morning, she said cheerfully. I picked up some of that fig jam you like. I didn't answer right away, just nodded and followed her movements. She unpacked the bag slowly. Fig jam, sourdough, oranges, 2 jars of honey. Different brand than the last one. Local. Hand-labeled. New honey. I asked, voice even. She glanced up. Yeah, the guy at the stall recommended it. Said it's his personal blend. The guy? I asked. You mean Trey? She froze for a half second. Just a blink. Then smiled. No, this was someone else. Older guy. I didn't see Trey today. He's usually only there on weekdays. That was the moment I knew she was lying. She didn't even realize Trey was there every Saturday. He owned the stall. The weekday thing was just a little off-script detail she thought would cover her tracks. But I let it go. Got it, I said. Cool. Later that afternoon, she said she needed to run errands, Target, the bank, a stop by Marissa's place. I watched her leave through the living room window, saw her car disappear down the street. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my keys and followed. I stayed back a few cars, not tailing close enough to spook her. She didn't go to Target. She didn't go to the bank. She drove straight downtown, took a sharp right, and parked near the back of the market square. I pulled off 2 streets down and watched from the corner. She got out, hair tied up, sunglasses on, not dressed for errands. Tight jeans, white blouse, lipstick she hadn't worn at home in months. She walked straight toward Trey's stall. And there he was, tall, smiling, like he'd been waiting for her. They talked. Close. Too close. He leaned in and she laughed, tilting her head in that way she did when she wanted someone to feel important. She reached into her purse and handed him something. A small package. He unwrapped it, and for a moment I thought I saw his eyes light up. The bracelet. She gave him the bracelet, the one I ruined. Trey looked at it, then looked back at her, expression faltering. He said something I couldn't hear. Lauren frowned, touched his arm, and they both disappeared behind the side of his truck. I moved fast, cutting through the alley and slipping between booths, pretending to browse as I edged closer. I reached the back of Trey's stall just in time to hear her voice, low, urgent, but not angry. "I don't know what happened to it," she said. "I swear it wasn't like that when I packed it." Trey replied, irritated. "It looks used, like someone wore it for years then tossed it." Lauren hesitated. "Maybe it got messed up in my purse. I didn't check it before. Look, I'll get you another." "I'm not some side thing," Trey snapped. "If you're going to play this game, at least be honest." My heart started hammering. I stepped back into the crowd, back into myself. She wasn't just seeing him. She was promising him things. Gifts. Time. Whatever it was they had, it wasn't new. It was practiced. I left the market before they emerged, driving home in silence, each breath heavier than the last. When she returned 2 hours later, she walked in with a fake Target bag and an even faker smile. I played dumb, sat on the couch, and watched her like a stranger. "You okay?" she asked eventually. "Fine," I said. "Just tired." She kissed the top of my head and disappeared upstairs. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling again, piecing it all together. The backup phone, the bracelet, the lies, the slip-ups, the name Trey. But one thing didn't sit right. Trey had sounded surprised, not like someone who was fully in on this. And Lauren? She was hiding more than just an affair. She was hiding the structure beneath it, the rules, the why. And now I had a new reason to dig. Because whatever she was doing, it wasn't just cheating. It was deeper, structured, deliberate. And I wasn't going to ask her for the truth. I was going to take it. I didn't speak to her the next morning, not beyond the mechanical morning and a nod over coffee. Lauren didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. She was dressed again, too nicely for Sunday. Said she had to meet Marissa to help with some fundraiser thing. I nodded, expression blank, and she kissed my cheek before she left. Her lips were cold. As soon as her car disappeared, I was in motion. First stop, the drawer. The backup phone was gone. She moved it. I didn't panic. I'd expected it. I'd seen the way her bag never left her side now. But I needed it. So I searched top to bottom, closet, bathroom cabinet, dresser drawers. Nothing. Then, almost ready to give up, I pulled open the linen closet in the hallway, reached into a spare pillowcase at the back, and felt the familiar shape, tucked inside the lining. Clever. I powered it on, and thank God she hadn't changed the pin. I opened the messages again, scrolling back to the top of her thread with T. This time, I read every word. The earliest message was 3 months old. Trey hadn't been her first message. She'd contacted him, told him she loved his energy at the stall, that he made her feel seen, that her marriage had become predictable. He replied fast, too fast, and it snowballed from there. Compliments turned to flirty remarks. Flirty remarks turned to innuendo. And innuendo turned into schedules. "When can I see you? You still free Tuesday? Same spot behind the truck?" I stopped reading. My mouth was dry, hands numb. I felt like I'd swallowed a wasp nest. But I wasn't finished. I backed out of the thread, opened the gallery. Dozens of pictures. None explicit, but they didn't need to be. Her sitting in her car, smiling with her lip bitten. A photo of 2 mugs on a table, captioned, "Our secret mornings." A picture of Trey, asleep. That one hit hardest. He looked peaceful, like he belonged there. She'd given him more than time. She gave him comfort. I dropped the phone back into the pillowcase and walked outside, needing air, space, distance. I paced the driveway, eyes unfocused. My mind raced, through memories, through all the ignored signs, all the times I brushed off her new routines as self-care. No, it was care, just not for herself. For him. I grabbed my phone and texted Sam. "Hey, you working today?" He replied in minutes. "Off today." "Why?" "Need a favor. Private. Meet me behind the market in 30. He agreed. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. I need another pair of eyes. I parked near the alley where Trey usually restocked his truck and waited. Sam showed up wearing his usual denim jacket, and that face he only made when he knew I wasn't messing around. "Okay," he said, arms crossed. "What's going on? I need to know if you've seen Lauren here." "With Trey." He blinked. "You mean the honey guy?" I nodded. Sam rubbed his beard. "Yeah, a few times, but nothing weird. Just chatting. Flirty maybe." "What?" I hesitated, then said, I think she's cheating on me. With him. Sam didn't laugh. He didn't say, come on, man. He just looked at me and said, okay, what do you want me to do? I want you to follow him. Discreetly. He finishes restocking in an hour. I just need to know where he goes. Who he meets. Sam nodded. You sure you want to do this? I'm done guessing. I watched from a block away as Trey finished up, packed the back of his truck, and headed out. Sam tailed him in his own car while I waited, phone in hand, heart in throat. An hour later, Sam texted, you're not going to like this. Try me. They're at the trailhead behind Oak Creek. He's parked. She met him there. Just the two of them. They're walking in. My vision tunneled. Oak Creek was our spot. My spot. The place I took Lauren the day I proposed. I didn't wait. I got in my truck and drove, fast, hands clenched tight on the wheel. The sky darkened above me. The air felt heavier than it should have. When I reached the trailhead, I parked far from the entrance and started walking. The path was empty, silent. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of my own boots grinding gravel. I moved carefully, eyes scanning for any sign of them. I was ready for anything. I thought I was ready. Then I heard them. Laughter. I crept forward, ducked behind a thick oak, and peeked around. There they were, sitting on the bench, overlooking the ravine. Trey leaned back, hand behind his head, legs stretched. Lauren beside him, legs crossed toward him, smiling. Not just at him, into him. I didn't step out. Not yet. Because this was the moment. I'd found her. I'd found them. And my mind wasn't screaming. It was still. Because I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to make a plan. I didn't go home that night. I drove straight past our street, turned left at the fork, and kept going until the gaslight blinked. Pulled into a vacant lot and sat there, truck humming beneath me, thinking, not about Lauren, not about Trey, but about how people look at betrayal like a storm, loud, angry, chaotic. They forget sometimes the most dangerous storms are the quiet ones, the ones you don't see coming until everything's already gone. In the silence of that empty parking lot, I made a choice. No screaming, no ultimatums, no fights. She wanted a new chapter? Fine. I'd give her an ending first. The next morning, I walked into a downtown coffee shop Lauren never visited and opened a new Tinder profile. I used the most recent photo I had, me at the auto shop, wiping grease off my hands with a crooked smile. Authentic. Real. Within hours, I matched with Emily. Emily was everything Lauren used to be, minus the performance. She taught yoga, owned her confidence, laughed easily, and didn't flinch when I told her my marriage was ending. His loss, she said with a smirk. Or hers, I guess. We messaged nonstop that first day, and by the next, we met for lunch. She smelled like peppermint and sunshine. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed without feeling like it was a lie. Emily wasn't just beautiful. She was magnetic. She moved like she didn't owe anyone an apology for existing. By our third date, we were walking through town like we'd known each other for years. I told her about my work, my dad's old wrench set, the quiet in my house that used to feel like peace and now just felt like rot. She didn't ask about Lauren until I mentioned her. I'm not interested in being a rebound, she said simply. But if this is real, if you're ready, I don't care where you came from. I was ready. More than that, I was focused because Lauren still hadn't returned home. She sent a single text 2 days after the ravine. I need time. I am sorry. I didn't respond. She didn't come back that week. But I heard whispers. Marissa said she'd seen Lauren staying with a friend. And word at the mechanic shop was Trey had closed his stall early twice since. Let them play house. I had something better planned. The next Saturday, I dressed clean. Ironed shirt. Jeans that fit just right. Emily wore a navy sundress that made every woman we passed do a double take. Her hand in mine felt like the most natural thing in the world. We walked into the farmer's market together, straight through the crowd. Heads turned. A few mouths dropped. But I kept walking. Calm. Focused. Fire in my pocket. Trey's stall came into view. He was arguing with someone with her back to me, but I knew that posture anywhere. Lauren. Her voice was tight. Frustrated. You said you weren't going to close early again. Trey's jaw was locked. You said you'd talk to him, that you'd fix things. Oh, so now it's my fault? I didn't sign up to be your secret. I stopped 3 feet from them. Emily didn't say a word. She just smiled, radiant and sharp. Lauren turned. The moment her eyes met mine, time paused. Her expression cracked in real time, shock, confusion, and then something that looked suspiciously like fear. I reached into the paper bag in my hand and pulled out a small sack of lemons. Held out to her. "You wanted fresh options," I said. "Here, sour suits you." I handed it to her like it weighed nothing. Trey blinked, looking from me to her, clearly realizing this wasn't a fight he was going to win. Lauren's lips parted, but no sound came out. "Good luck," I said to Trey with a shrug. "Hope you like reheated lies." Then I turned with Emily and walked off. No drama, no second glances. We didn't look back. We didn't need to. By the time we reached the other end of the market, people were staring like they'd just seen a ghost rise and slap the living out of the past. Emily squeezed my hand. "You good?" she asked. I nodded. "Better than I've been in years." That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. "You didn't have to humiliate me." I read it twice, then blocked the number. Let her feel what it's like to be left speechless. Let her sit in the ruins of the lies she thought she controlled. She wanted space. She could have all the space in the world, because now I wasn't part of it anymore. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.